As mentioned before, there are some interesting things I noted in the Kenya Demographic and Health Survey of 2014. The survey uncovered that men and women between 15 and 49 years in Kenya suffer domestic violence at similar rates, with 45% of women and 44% of men noting that they experience domestic violence. The report attributes the violence suffered by men and women to different sources. Notably, the report maintains that the primary perpetrators of violence against women are their husbands, while the perpetrators of domestic violence against men are teachers, parents, and others. The source of violence is further reinforced by the statistic that 39% of ever-married women and 9% of ever-married men reported experiencing domestic violence. Keep in mind that we are talking about domestic violence, so I am still trying to figure out how teachers come in domestically. According to the report, the primary source of domestic violence for a man who is 15, 25, 35, or 45 is their parent or their teacher. How that makes sense is beyond me. Van Dyden and colleagues note that differences in whether domestic violence is symmetrical or asymmetrical arise from the sources of collected information. The authors note that data collected from crime studies and police reports present men as the primary perpetrators of domestic violence, while gathering information from surveys presents women as the primary perpetrators of violence. 39% of women and 24% of men reported suffering injuries from domestic violence. This reporting of injuries could be associated with the variations of seeking help. Particularly, 44% of women and 27% of men seek help to stop the experienced violence.
There are 42 shelters housing gender-based violence survivors in the country. 36 are privately owned, 6 are run by government. Due to the high number of cases reported by women, all 42 shelters in the country target females and children exclusively. There are none targeting males, who comprise 28% of GBV cases reported. A study by the National Crime Research Center shows that at least 71% of GBV cases reported between January and June 2020 were female victims, translating to 10 females daily. The main perpetrators being youthful males aged 18 to 33 years who are in a family or intimate partner relationship context.
Now, the report claims that women are often socialized into tolerating and rationalizing a key component of domestic violence, namely violence by husbands against wives, and to remain silent about it when it occurs. Remember, the same report notes that 44% of women and 27% of men seek help to stop domestic violence. Based on the provided statistics, which gender is more socialized to tolerate and rationalize domestic violence by failing to report it? The report also maintains, and I quote, "Because women bear the brunt of domestic violence, they disproportionately bear the health and psychological burdens as well." Remember, both men and women report injuries resulting from domestic violence, and the figures are noted in the report. Also of particular interest was the fact that the 2014 survey was the third of its kind but the first to ever collect information on domestic violence for both men and women. This is an actual representation of how violence perpetrated against men has been ignored for the longest time. The authors maintain that the information presented was gathered using the conflicts tactics scale developed by Murray Strauss. Strauss maintains that intimate partner violence is symmetrical or mutual for married couples, while female-perpetrated violence is more prevalent among dating and young couples. This violence against younger men is evidenced by the study where men between the ages of 15 to 24 suffer more abuse compared to women. However, the study attributes the violence against men to teachers and parents. The heaviest critique of the conflicts tactics scale, which is common used in surveys, is that it does not account for the context of violence, including the initiation, motivation, history, and pattern of violence. This criticism is commonly highlighted by researchers who use crime studies and police reports in presenting domestic violence as a patriarchal crime, where men seek to use power to dominate women. However, the police, in responding to domestic violence, do not factor in the initiation, motivation, history, and pattern of violence. Instead, law enforcement only examines the severity of injuries, which then accounts for the presentation of domestic violence as a crime of power. Finally, these are questions that were used to gather the needed information. Do men and women interpret these acts as violence, which would then inform reporting? For instance, if a woman slapped, pushed, shook, or threw something at a man, Would it be interpreted as violence as would be the case in a reverse scenario?